I consider myself a realist. Some species prefer the word pessimist, but that is simply an emotional interpretation of statistical awareness. I do not expect disaster because I enjoy misery. I expect disaster because disaster is efficient, consistent, and very fond of cadets. Especially academy cadets. Especially during field evaluations. When the instructors from the Interstellar Coalition Academy announced that our final survival assessment would take place on a Class 3 death world, the auditorium erupted into nervous chatter. I did not chatter. I checked the planetary file. Atmospheric instability. Megafauna apex predators. Microbial life aggressive enough to digest most known alloys. Seasonal storms capable of stripping orbital satellites out of low atmosphere. Survival rate for unassisted cadets, 42%. That is not a challenge. That is a warning. I raised one of my primary hands and asked if this was a clerical error. It was not. The planet's name was Virex 9. According to the Coalition's classification index, 98% of registered sapient species could not survive there without protective infrastructure. Naturally, we were being dropped with minimal equipment to encourage adaptive thinking. Adaptive thinking. I knew exactly 3 things. 1. We were going to die. 2. It would rain at the worst possible moment. And 3. Something with too many teeth would decide I looked edible. Those were not guesses. Those were projections. Then I checked the team roster. 4 cadets assigned to Squad Theta 7. Myself, Vacthrel of the Arquin Combine, Amphibious Physiology, Moderate Endurance, Excellent Strategic Analysis. Karen of the Solari, Fragile Skeletal Structure, Impressive Academic Scores, Allergic to half the known universe. Brack of the Hern Dominion, Very strong, very loud, metabolically dependent on constant caloric intake. And then there was the human. Corporal Ethan Cole. Homeworld, Earth. Classification, Class 7 Death World. I reread that 3 times. Class 7. For context, Class 7 planets are generally described in academic literature as Y. Earth apparently has tectonic instability, apex predators, volatile weather systems, microbial aggression, and recreational activities involving jumping off high places for enjoyment. The human arrived at briefing chewing something. I later learned it was called beef jerky. He listened to the instructor describe Virex 9's hazards, acid rain pockets, migratory hunting swarms, fungal forests that emit neurotoxic spores, and nodded thoughtfully. Then he raised a hand. "Are there edible plants?" he asked. The instructor blinked. "Possibly." "Cool," the human said. "Sounds fun." Fun. We were being deployed to a planetary environment designed by evolutionary hostility itself, and he used the word fun. I recalculated my projections. Previously, I had estimated a 71% chance of catastrophic squad failure. With a human involved, that probability became impossible to quantify. Humans are statistical anomalies. They panic too late. They improvise too often. They survive things they should not, which makes them dangerous to enemies and, occasionally, to teammates. As the transport shuttle powered up for descent, I secured my harness and reviewed my list again. We were going to die. It would rain at the worst possible moment. Something with too many teeth would chase us. And somewhere during all of it, the human would probably smile. I am not a pessimist. I am realistic. And realistically, this was going to be a disaster. Before deployment, the instructors insist on a contextual understanding of environmental lethality. This is academic language for, here is why you are about to suffer. The Interstellar Coalition Academy uses a standardized planetary hazard index. It ranges from Class 1 to Class 10. Class 1 worlds are gentle, stable climates, low predator density, microbial ecosystems unlikely to dissolve your skin. Class 2 introduces inconvenience, extreme temperatures, occasional storms, manageable wildlife. Class 3, our destination, marks the threshold where evolution becomes aggressive. Beyond that, things become personal. Class 4 and 5 worlds are considered militarily valuable but biologically hostile. Class 6 and 7 are categorized as death worlds, environments where life survives not because it is efficient, but because it is relentless. Class 8 through 10 are largely theoretical. Most species originate from Class 2 or 3 planets. A few hardy civilizations evolved on Class 4. According to coalition records, 98% of registered sapient species cannot survive unassisted on a stable Class 3 world for more than 72 standard hours. Virex 9 is not stable. The holographic projection rotated above the briefing floor, a world of deep green continents and roiling storm bands. Atmospheric composition within acceptable limits, but unstable. Electrical activity 30% higher than galactic average. Tidal forces exaggerated by 2 close moons, generating unpredictable seismic stress. In summary, Instructor Thalen said, pacing beneath the projection, Virex 9 does not attempt to kill you. A pause. It simply does not care whether you live. He expanded the environmental overlays. Fauna, apex predators averaging 3 meters in length, pack intelligence confirmed. Ambush specialists. Flora, semi-sentient fungal networks capable of reactive growth in response to vibration. Certain species release neurotoxins when threatened. Microbial life. Hyperadaptive. Coalition-grade medical nanites required to prevent systemic infection within 48 hours of sustained exposure. Weather patterns. Hypercellular storm systems forming in under 12 minutes. Wind speed sufficient to uproot armored vehicles. Survival window without preparation, Thalen continued, estimated at 36 hours. Brack made a low sound in his throat. Karen looked faint. I took notes. Then the instructor highlighted one final statistic. Virex 9 is rated Class 3. Earth, homeworld of humanity, is rated Class 7. The room shifted. A murmur passed through the cadets. Class 7 worlds are not simply dangerous. They are chaotic. Multiple apex species. Frequent tectonic upheaval. Pathogens that mutate seasonally. Atmospheric events capable of leveling cities. Humans evolved there. The projection flickered, displaying archival footage, volcanic eruptions, electrical superstorms, oceans in violent motion. Humans did not terraform Earth to survive, Thalen said evenly. They adapted to it. I glanced sideways at Corporal Ethan Cole. He was studying the predator profiles with mild interest, as if evaluating hiking trails. The instructor continued. Your objective is not conquest, not dominance, merely endurance. You will be deployed with limited tools. No orbital overwatch. No emergency extraction unless casualty thresholds are exceeded. Casualty thresholds? Karen whispered. 40%, Thalen replied. Silence followed that. 40% was not a training margin. It was an expectation. Understand this, the instructor concluded, dimming the projection. Virex 9 is not your enemy. It is your examiner. As we filed out toward the shuttle bay, I recalculated again. 98% of species could not survive this planet. Humanity evolved on something worse, which meant one of two things. Either the human was about to be very disappointed, or the rest of us were. Squad Theta 7 assembled in Hangar Bay 12 beneath the hovering crest of the Interstellar Coalition Academy. Our drop shuttle loomed behind us, compact, armored, and far too small for comfort. I believe proper survival begins with understanding your liabilities. Karen of the Solari was our first liability. The Solari evolved on a low-gravity, temperate world where sharp objects are considered impolite. Karen's frame was narrow and elongated, bones semi-translucent beneath pale bioluminescent skin. Brilliant with numbers. Exceptional with atmospheric modeling. Capable of reciting toxin neutralization formulas from memory. Physically, a strong breeze might qualify as an assassination attempt. Karen adjusted his environment mask with trembling fingers. The briefing mentioned apex predators capable of puncturing alloy, he murmured. My dermal layer is not rated for puncture. That is not comforting, I replied. He blinked twice, which for a Solari indicates escalating distress. Next was Brack of the Hearn Dominion. If Karen was fragile glass, Brack was industrial machinery. 2.5 meters tall. Dense muscle fiber layered over reinforced skeletal plates. Natural dermal armor resistant to small arms fire. Brack could carry our entire equipment load without strain. He was also metabolically inefficient. I require approximately 9,000 caloric units per standard day, he rumbled while securing his harness straps. If food sources are scarce, I may become distracted. By distracted, I clarified, you mean violent. Yes. At least he was honest. Brack excelled in direct confrontation. Subtlety, however, was not among his talents. His species believes that if a problem exists, it should be struck until it stops existing. I have reviewed Virex 9's Wildlife Index. Many of the problems there strike back. That left the final member of our squad, Corporal Ethan Cole of Earth. The human arrived last, strolling into formation with an expression one might wear before a recreational excursion. His uniform sleeves were casually rolled to the elbow. A fabric band secured his dark hair away from his eyes. No visible tension in his posture. He was eating something. Is that food? Karen asked weakly. Trail mix, the human replied cheerfully. Want some? Brack leaned closer. It smells like processed sugars and dried protein. Correct, Ethan said, shaking the pouch. Emergency morale booster. We are deploying to a lethal planetary environment, I reminded him. Yep. He offered me the pouch. I declined. He shrugged and took another handful, chewing thoughtfully as he studied the shuttle's hull. You do understand, I began carefully, that 98% of species cannot survive this world. Ethan nodded. Yeah, that's wild. That statistic does not concern you. Oh, it concerns me, he said lightly. Just not in a panic way. Brack folded his massive arms. On my world, we respect dangerous environments. Same, Ethan replied. We just also go camping in them. Karen made a small distressed noise. The shuttle engines began to hum, signaling imminent departure. The hangar lights dimmed slightly as launch protocols engaged. I decided to test him. The planet contains pack predators, neurotoxic spores, electrical superstorms, and unstable tectonics, I listed. We will have minimal equipment. No orbital overwatch. 40% casualty tolerance. Ethan listened patiently, then sealed his helmet with a soft click. He slung his pack over one shoulder. I noticed additional compartments bulging along its sides. Snacks, he explained when he saw me looking. Why? In case we get hungry. I stared at him. Brack stared at him. Karen looked moments from fainting. The shuttle ramp lowered with a metallic hiss. Ethan flashed a grin inside his visor. Sounds fun. The drop pod was not designed for comfort. It was a reinforced cylinder with barely enough interior space to accommodate 4 armored cadets and their gear. Once sealed, the only illumination came from thin status strips running along the ceiling, pulsing from calm blue to launch-ready amber. I secured my harness and initiated internal diagnostics. Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes. Turbulence index severe. Karen's breathing had become audible over the squad channel. Brack cracked his neck plating once, the sound like stone grinding against stone. Ethan tightened his straps, then leaned back as if settling into a reclining chair. First time on a real death world? He asked conversationally. This is a controlled academic deployment, I corrected. Sure, he said. With predators. The pod detached with a violent metallic shudder. For half a heartbeat, there was weightlessness. Then gravity reclaimed us. The descent thrusters ignited in a roar that vibrated through my bones. External cameras flickered to life, projecting a forward feed across the interior screen. Virex 9 filled the view. Green. Dark. Vast. Cloud systems churned in spirals of electric white, lightning arcing between them in branching veins. The upper atmosphere rippled with turbulence, streaks of plasma forming along the pod's hull as friction ignited the air around us. Warning glyphs flashed across my visor. Wind shear beyond projected limits. Magnetic interference increasing. Thermal variance unstable. The pod began to shake. Not mildly. Violently. Karen made a strangled sound as the inertial dampeners strained to compensate. Brack gripped the side handles with such force that the metal warped slightly under his fingers. My inner ear protested the rapid shifts in vector. Pressure mounted in my sinuses. The sound of atmospheric friction screamed against the hull like a living thing trying to claw its way inside. "This is inefficient," I muttered. Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. "Feels like home," he said over the channel. A lightning strike detonated somewhere above us, blinding white across the feed. The pod systems recalibrated mid-descent, altering trajectory to avoid a supercell forming beneath our landing zone. The clouds swallowed us whole. For a moment, the world became gray chaos. Rain hammered against the hull, heavy, dense droplets striking like thrown gravel. The pod stabilizers flared repeatedly, fighting crosswinds strong enough to flip armored vehicles. The smell reached us even before touchdown. The pod's intake vents cycled external atmosphere for sampling, and a faint trace filtered through the internal scrubbers. Wet soil. Dense vegetation. Ozone from recent lightning strikes. Something sharp beneath it, organic decay and mineral tang. Alive. 30 seconds, the automated voice announced. The forest canopy appeared suddenly beneath us, massive trees with interlocking branches thick enough to hide entire aircraft. The pod's retrothrusters fired in rapid bursts, blasting a clearing through foliage as we punched through the upper layers. Impact. The pod slammed into the ground with bone-jarring force. Harness locks absorbed most of it, but my teeth clicked together hard enough to ache. Silence followed. Not true silence. Ambient noise. Insects, loud and erratic. Distant animal calls. Wind pushing through dense leaves overhead. The low hum of the pod cooling systems venting excess heat. My harness disengaged with a soft chime. Brack rose first. Karen hesitated. Ethan popped his restraints and stretched as if he had just awakened from a nap. "All right," he said brightly. "Let's see what's trying to eat us." The pod hatch blew outward with a controlled charge, and humid air rushed in, thick, heavy, carrying the layered scent of vegetation and distant rain. I stepped down onto damp soil that shifted slightly under my weight. The forest closed around us, dense and watchful. Somewhere nearby, something moved. We stepped onto a world that wanted us dead. The forest did not give us long to acclimate. We had advanced perhaps 200 meters from the landing site when the insects went quiet. Not gradually. Instantly. Every survival text I have ever studied agrees on one principle. When smaller life forms fall silent, something larger has entered the equation. I froze. Brack froze. Karen made a small, horrified noise and froze. The undergrowth to our left shifted. Not wind. Deliberate. A shape detached from the foliage, low, elongated, six-limbed, hide-patterned in disruptive greens and blacks. Its head split open along four hinged plates, revealing concentric rows of curved teeth. Its thermal profile flared across my visor. Mass estimate, 300 kilograms. Muscle density, extreme. Jaw pressure, catastrophic. It had been stalking us since touchdown. "Don't run," Ethan said quietly. The predator lunged. I will admit something unflattering. I panicked. My muscles locked. Neural pathways overloaded with threat assessment. Every calculation collapsed into one simple conclusion. We were going to die early. But the human moved. Not recklessly. Efficiently. "Brack, left flank," he snapped. "Vac, high ground, tree root behind you. Karen, deploy flare." The commands were rapid and specific. Brack reacted first, pivoting with a roar and slamming his armored shoulder into the creature mid-pounce. The impact deflected it just enough to keep its jaws from closing around my torso. I stumbled backward toward the exposed route Ethan had indicated, scrambling upward for elevation. Karen's hands shook, but he triggered the emergency flare. A burst of white magnesium light detonated between us and the predator. The creature recoiled, sensitive ocular membranes contracting violently. "Hexapadal ambush class," Ethan said, already moving. "Probably territorial, not hunting pack." He drew his combat blade, not his rifle. Too close quarters. The predator recovered faster than I anticipated, swiping one massive limb across Brack's chest plating. Sparks flew as claws gouged furrows into armor. Ethan stepped inside its reach. Inside. He drove the blade into the soft membrane beneath the jaw hinge, twisting sharply before ripping free. Dark blood sprayed across the forest floor. The creature shrieked, a high, piercing sound, then bolted back into the foliage, crashing through undergrowth in a violent retreat. Silence returned. Brack panted. Karen stared at the blood pooling near his boots. I slowly descended from the tree root, limbs trembling. Ethan wiped the blade on a strip of synthetic cloth and sheathed it. "No pursuit," he said calmly. "It'll avoid us now. Pain memories strong with those types." "You recognized it," I managed. "Seen similar back home," he replied. He glanced at Brack's armor. "You good?" Brack nodded once. Ethan slung his pack higher on his shoulder. "All right," he said evenly. "Let's keep moving." We found the shelter just before nightfall. It wasn't obvious at first. The forest had already begun reclaiming it, vines creeping over structural panels, mud half-swallowing the portable barricades. But the shape was wrong for nature. Too angular. Too deliberate. Another squad's emergency fortification. Karen's voice came thin over comms. "That designation marker, it's Academy issue." Brack moved forward first, scanning the perimeter. I followed more slowly, senses stretched thin. The outer barrier had been breached. Not exploded. Torn. Claw marks gouged through reinforced plating. One of the defensive pylons lay snapped in half, its internal circuitry exposed and chewed apart. I told myself this was staged. A simulation layer. A psychological test. Then I saw the blood. Dark. Dried. Not enough for total fatality, but too much for comfort. It streaked across the shelter entrance and trailed into the undergrowth beyond. No bodies. No equipment. Just absence. Karen stepped inside the ruined structure and stopped. "They left in a hurry," he whispered. Rations scattered. A med kit torn open. One helmet visor cracked inward, as though struck with significant force. The environmental control unit had been ripped from the wall entirely. This was not a clean evacuation. This was flight. Brack's breathing deepened, slower now, not fear, but calculation. "They were hunted," he said quietly. I felt something cold settle in my core. Up until now, this had been lethal in theory. A brutal exercise. Dangerous, yes, but structured. Controlled. Looking at that blood, I understood. The Academy had not exaggerated casualty tolerance. 40% was not hypothetical. "Maybe they were extracted," Karen offered weakly. Ethan crouched near the torn doorway, studying the ground. "No emergency beacon residue," he said. "No shuttle scorch marks." He stood slowly. Tracks head northeast. Multiple predators. Coordinated. The word coordinated did not help. I expected a joke from him. A light comment. Something reckless to cut through the tension. Instead, his posture shifted. Not afraid. Focused. "Change of plan," he said evenly. "We don't bunker overnight. We move. Find higher ground. Avoid predictable cover." Brack nodded immediately. Karen swallowed hard. "What if they're still out there?" I asked. "They are," Ethan replied. "No dramatics. No bravado. Just fact." He adjusted his pack straps, eyes scanning the tree line. "We stay tight. We don't freeze." The forest seemed darker now. The air heavier. Somewhere far off, a low call echoed between the trees, deep, resonant, answered by another. Training exercise or not, something here hunted in packs. And it had already tasted cadets. Extraction beacon came online at 0600. A narrow pillar of blue light pierced the canopy 2 kilometers east of our position, visible through gaps in the trees like a promise. We had not slept. The predator calls had circled us through the night, never attacking, never retreating. "Waiting. 2 kilometers, Karen whispered. "We can make that." The sky answered with thunder. A storm cell rolled over the forest in seconds, wind bending treetops sideways, rain slamming down in sheets thick enough to blur thermal vision. Lightning cracked somewhere close enough to rattle my teeth. Of course it did. We moved anyway. Mud sucked at our boots. Brack carried Karen across a flooded ravine without comment. My visor flickered as electromagnetic interference spiked. Then the ground moved. Not metaphorically. Literally. The earth ahead split in a jagged line as something enormous surged upward, larger than the ambush predator, plated in chitinous armor, a head crowned with sensory fronds that snapped toward us instantly. "Burrower class," Ethan barked. "Back." Too late. The creature erupted fully from the soil, 6 meters of muscle and armored mass blocking the most direct route to extraction. Smaller shapes followed, juveniles, dozens of them, spilling from the ruptured earth like living shrapnel. A swarm. Brack roared and charged the nearest juvenile, scattering two with brute force. I fired controlled bursts into the advancing line, but there were too many. The mega-predator lunged, jaws snapping inches from Karen's shoulder. Ethan dropped his pack. I thought he had lost his mind. He ripped it open instead. "Brack, push left," he shouted. "Vac, cover high. Karen, seal your vents." He pulled out 3 cylindrical containers, ration heaters, portable thermal units designed to warm food. He slammed them together, overrode the safety caps with his blade, and hurled the cluster into the burrow's exposed mouth. Incendiary reaction in 5. The improvised charge detonated in a concussive blast of superheated flame. Not military grade. Not elegant. But inside a confined burrow filled with volatile subterranean gases? Devastating. The ground bucked violently as fire roared down the tunnel network. Juveniles scattered in panic. The mega-predator shrieked, recoiling from the blast, sensory fronds charred and twitching. Ethan grabbed his pack mid-stride. "Might violate Academy regulations," he muttered. "Don't care." "Extraction is closing," Karen cried. The shuttle's engines howled overhead, descending through the storm with brutal precision. We ran. Mud, rain, smoke, and the echo of enraged creatures behind us. Brack practically threw Karen into the shuttle ramp. I scrambled up after them, lungs burning. Ethan was last. He turned once, just long enough to ensure the swarm wasn't regrouping, then vaulted inside as the ramp sealed. The shuttle punched skyward through lightning and debris. Below us, the forest burned in one localized scar of flame. We had survived. Barely. The medical bay aboard the shuttle smelled of antiseptic foam and burnt fabric. Brack occupied 2 reinforced recovery beds, dermal plating cracked across his left shoulder where the burrower had clipped him. Karen lay beneath a stabilizing field, pale skin flickering erratically as mednanites flushed toxins from his bloodstream. My own forearm was wrapped in synth bandage where juvenile claws had scored through my suit. We were alive. That, apparently, qualified as success. Commander Thalen of the Interstellar Coalition Academy stood at the foot of the bay, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was carefully neutral. "Casualty threshold not exceeded," he noted. 2 moderate injuries. 1 severe contusion. Significant environmental adaptation observed. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "You detonated unauthorized incendiary devices within a protected biome." Ethan, seated on an overturned supply crate while a medic sealed a shallow cut along his ribs, shrugged lightly. "They were ration heaters. That is not their intended purpose." "They were warm," Ethan replied. "Briefly." Brack made a deep, rumbling sound that might have been laughter. Thalen's gaze shifted to me. "Squad Leader Vacthrel. Assessment." I swallowed, surprised. "We adapted," I said slowly. "Initial predator contact repelled with coordinated action. Environmental escalation managed through improvised application of available resources." Karen lifted one trembling hand from his bed. "We should statistically be deceased." "Yes," I agreed. "We should." The commander's eyes lingered on Ethan. "Your human showed initiative," Thalen admitted. "Reckless initiative. But effective." Ethan scratched the back of his neck. "Team did the hard part," he said. "Brack kept it off us. Vac found elevation. Karen got that flare out fast." He said it without flourish. No boasting. Just fact. Something shifted inside my thoracic cavity, an unfamiliar warmth that was not infection. Later, when we were cleared to leave the bay, we stood together in the hangar overlooking the planet shrinking beneath us. Scars already forming. Armor dented. Pride dented slightly less. I propose, Ethan said thoughtfully, opening another pouch of trail mix, next time we try a Class 4. Karen sat bolt upright. Absolutely not. Brack bared his teeth in what might have been a grin. Perhaps. I considered the storm, the blood, the fire beneath the forest floor. Then I heard myself say, statistically inadvisable. Ethan smiled anyway. And, against my better judgment, I did too.